All right, next speaker, we're bringing in Chris Vandervalk from the Whissell team. Chris, I'm gonna bring you right in, man. What's up, dude?
Let's do it. How are you, man?
I'm doing super good. We're 2 hours in, and lots of good stuff, man. I'm really excited to have you on. Your role with Whissell is maybe walk us through a little bit your role, your background. I think people would love to get to know you a little better.
I appreciate that, man. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate you and Brian a lot for giving me the opportunity, and excited to share. So my role started originally in inside sales and real estate about 5 years ago. I joined a really great team in Chicago that was primarily focused on REO and was looking to do a little bit more on the traditional side. And obviously, you can create your own business by lead generating and lead converting. And so we built an ISA model there. It was me, and then we added about 3 more in the next year and had a lot of success with it. Shortly thereafter, I went to do my own thing, got in a major accident, so that didn't work out too well after about 4 months into that. Ended up in San Diego, highly suggested, one of the best cities I've ever been to, and found Kyle Whissell, started up with him, came in for the Zillow program that we had a lot of success with our team, but at the same time, we were starting to build an ISA model here. And it's just kind of naturally progressed into looking at one of the best businesses in real estate I've seen, and how do we analyze it? And that's kind of what I want to talk about today, and help it scale and look at scalable processes and just really inspect what we're doing to add scalable models to grow. And when you take something like Zillow Offers that we worked with, or a lot of these agents out there with Zillow Flex, or really any partnership, even in your market space of like working with a mortgage lender, it's really hard to partner with people if your own processes can't handle the scale that you need to do to actually advance and elevate to that level. So my job uniquely kind of progressed from that inside sales development here at Whissell to now coming in as chief operations officer, and really just inspecting everything inside of the business and helping it be a more scalable, duplicatable process, so that as we go to 500 transactions next year that Kyle talked about in his, it has to be able to handle that stress that those added transactions are going to add.
A lot of people, and this is why I really wanted to have you on. We're going to talk ops, right? And ops is so hard. And a lot of people have this mindset of, man, I just got to go and just process everything out and it'll be good to go. But I think, and they think that there's insanity right now. Well, just wait 5 years. The technology is not going to stop coming. We're going to have more technology thrown at us.
I'd argue it's going to make it worse. It's going to, and Robbie, I think he spoke a little bit ago. I don't know if he covered it, but he said it really well at the conference I was just at with him, is it's going to literally exacerbate the problem at scale. As the more tech that's going to come, the worse your processes are, and the more cumbersome they are, and the less clarity you have around them. Tech is going to make it worse, not better, if they're not fleshed out.
Yep. And so I think as a team, especially as a team looking to grow, you got to just be able to roll with these punches. You got to be able to absorb them, and you got to have processes that can at least keep you some clarity right now, but that you can continue to mold. It's a living, breathing thing, right? The worst thing is you get this process, it's on a Google Doc and it sits somewhere and no one looks at it and never changes. It's not going to work, right? So
yeah, and that's why one of the first things I did when I came into this role and meeting with all the departments is just accepting. And actually, my mentor in my first company really ingrained. He was a really good leader in that way, and just identified there's always going to be a stress in the business if you're growing. So if for example, if salespeople are overwhelmed with the amount of leads they have, we don't have enough salespeople maybe to work enough the quantity of leads we have, right? And at a certain point, those are going to become transactions, which is going to lead to our TC, in our admin department being overwhelmed with the high influx of transactions we have now. So, now that could be a process problem or a people problem. And it's very important to look at, is the process, and that's why I always start with that, is the process the most efficient it can be? And is it streamlined as much as possible so it's scalable? And that's kind of what I was talking to with that. So that way, when it's time to scale and add people, now you have a ratio of, okay, one TC can handle 60 transactions. So at all times, there's going to be something that's getting stressed. Either my salespeople are working too much of a pipeline and they're not happy, so I need to add more salespeople to give them a little bit, more manageable workload. And when they start to crush it, my TCs are going to be overwhelmed. So there's always an element of the business that's going to need some love, right? And I think that's okay to just accept at the beginning that just because it's getting stressed, that's normal. It doesn't mean your process is broken. You should, though, inspect that process. So that's what we started to do, is really go through the process and document everything first. And when I say document, I think it's important to document it when you're inspecting it. But when you document it to go back and revisit, it should be 20% of those processes that get 80% of the results. That I would definitely lean on that theory, because the problem is, if it's a training manual, not a process documentation, your existing core staff are never going to use it. If I have to go read through 40 lines of text to find the one thing I'm looking for, in a pinch, in a moment, I'm probably not going to resource that. I'm going to hit someone else up in the company, or I'm going to just do my own way, because having to do that much research to follow a process it's not scalable. So I think it's really important to really find the most important parts of that process to document. And then after that's documented, then go ahead and let's evaluate, ask really tough questions. And I did it with our TC department. Like, one of the examples is when we meet with stagers or external, people to schedule on inspections, things like that, our TCs were going ahead and calling the inspection company or the stager, and then calling the client and trying to middleman a time that worked for both of them. And my argument when we went through that is, hey, we trust this company that we work with. We do 80% of our showings through this company, our staging. Why don't we trust them just to go directly to the customer and cut us out and give a better consumer experience? And we don't have to do these back and forth phone calls that are taking, anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour a day for all of our files. Why are we doing that if we trust this person and it would give a better client experience? Let's eliminate that from one of our steps. So kind of two is just, what can we peel away that either doesn't give a good client experience, or two is just really unnecessary. And then from there, and I'll go into it a little bit more as we talk, then I try to get a VA to do what's black and white. If it's a repeatable process, like when we really launched into CSU a lot, crap in, crap out. If the data going in is not concise and accurate, I can't use the ability to interpret that data in CSU that's so strong about the product. And so how do we get the most streamlined data in, and how can it be as black and white as possible? Because if it's not, you can't offload and use automation and tech where we're really going. And so after documenting and reducing and refining them, now let's go ahead and what can we offload to a VA? And the whole goal with a VA for our team is, how fast can we build an automation, a webhook, Zapier? If you guys don't know how to do that, I highly recommend finding. There's a lot of companies out there that can help build this for not a lot of money. Automate as much as possible. But the problem is you can't automate overcomplicated processes, and a VA will help you get accountable. When we had our director of operations go ahead and start with a VA, I mean, she was nearly in tears because she was so stressed about how to make this less complicated, because one of our agents had this, for their listings, we did this, for another agent, we did this, for another agent, we did this. And the problem is what we quickly found is someone in Pakistan that crushes work for us doesn't have the ability to sit there and go, okay, well, what do I do for this person? What do I do for this person? And that's just not scalable if we want to have 100 agents, 200 agents. And so the VA really helps you get accountable for those future automated processes by really scaling off the stuff that needs to stay in-house. And then most importantly, I would add to that is your employment of people is your highest cost in a business. And a lot of companies I've seen really don't like to automate their processes. And I've heard arguments like, oh, well, I pay this person to do that, as if it's like this prideful thing that's why you have staff to do these things. But if you have really high level talent, which and I think some people have talked on that today, and that's the highest and best thing. And talent's going to stay if you make their life easier. And you get more out of that talent if you're letting them get creative and letting them bring. Steve Jobs talks about it all the time, as his business was a startup even after, he came back to Apple. It always had that startup. Everyone has an input and the best idea wins. And so if you create that culture where you're getting your talent to be able to collaborate like that, it's important to remove the minutia and the repetitive work that they don't need to be doing that automation can fulfill. And I think that adds a level of creativity to our business now, where literally everyone, and Kyle already had the best people I've literally ever worked with before I came here, but now we're getting to a point where they're able to collaborate and add to some already great ideas and make them better. And it's just a different type of collaboration. And I think that's the most important thing I would say about the process, that we're talking about, of scaling back and offloading a lot of this. Don't be prideful that these people have to do this because that's why you hired them. It's okay to pivot and offload the redundant to a $3, $5 an hour VA and some automation, and now let them do higher level things. Because when we scale, we don't want to proportionately scale our salary cost. So if we can limit as we scale to not, move our employment with that and have to hire more people, well, now the company's more profitable, and the ability to pivot through coronavirus or whatever else happens next, it's really important to stay lean. And I think it allows us to do that. Kind of a long answer.
No, that's a great answer. And I think the value that you or anyone operationally provides is being able to simplify, to reduce the minutia that your people, these brilliant people that you went out and hired, and keep them focused on the things that they're amazing at, that they're talented at, that they love to do, right?
And you see it in the best companies in the world. Like that is we're in a place where our voices can be heard, in our free time. Social media allows it. Like if you think of it that way, employees are the same thing. They're just people. And a lot of them, if they're at a great company, which, we're lucky to be a part of, they want to come to the table with ideas, and they want to be heard. And quite frankly, it's where you get your best, solutions at. And if you're in a culture where everything's able to be brought to the table, the revolution that's going to happen is going to be so much faster and consumer focused, and the results that yields are just, you can't even quantify. So the most important thing to even get to that level is they can't be doing busy work. If you can't even get out of the phase of always playing catch up, which it's always going to be, like I said at the beginning, there's always going to be an admin need. If there's not an admin need, there's going to be a salespeople need, or we need to buy more leads or generate more leads, or we need ISAs. There's always going to be something in the business. And I think that's just so important to accept that that's not a problem. That's part of growth. And we can all, like, products either going to be behind, or that's just part of it. So look and identify, and always, that's where measuring that data is so important. But you can't even get to that if we don't have clean enough processes that everyone knows and everyone's in alignment. One of the other things I'd kind of say is, when you're doing that documentation, do it with everyone. Like, we started EOS model for leadership, and one of the first things we had to do is kind of go through and look at processes. So I sat down with our entire leadership team, and I wanted to understand, what does the left hand do? What does the right hand do? And then when does the next person step in? And what we realized, even in one of the best companies in real estate with Kyle, there was people doing the same task and actually crossing over each other all the time, because we've scaled so fast in this first, 11 years of business that he's been. Kyle's grown really fast. And so when people leave, another person takes, and they just start over with that process the person before them did. And so probably somewhere in there, someone else decided to take on the responsibility of what the person that left did to cover, someone else. And now that new person's doing it too. And by, 10, 11 years into the business, we're just always running. People are doing some of the same things, and it's a little redundant, and they're not communicating well. Yet we still have a great culture. So that was like one of the first steps, is like, hey, how do we all help each other versus just sprint and run with our hair on fire to get things done? And I think that's where we get to have this now element of creativity we're going into for next year, to really start to aggressively grow our business again.
Yeah. So when we talk next year, and you, going from however many you're doing today to breaking 500 transactions, right, which is the goal for next year, what are your big bucket items, like things you feel like you and your department need to accomplish to make that happen?
Yeah, great question. So lead generation and lead conversion, ISA backgrounds where I come from. So one of the things in automation that really started for me with automation is that department. When I was in the role, we called only expired and FSBOs. It was grueling work. I mean, we sold a couple hundred homes just doing that as our only lead gen source. We both weren't originally from the area. Rainmaker had, I don't know, maybe 1,000 people in his database. Never bought pay-per-click leads, none of that. So everything we did, I mean, it was literally Mojo as a CRM, note cards, and dialing expireds and FSBOs, and we crushed it, but not scalable and not bulletproof for longevity. Like, that's not working in California, because we don't have expireds like that. Our average days on market are like 10. So when I came here, I'm like, I had to reinvent kind of how we do ISA, because that model wasn't going to work here. And so one of the biggest frustrations when on the phone was, if I got on the phone, my appointment set rate was insane. I mean, if I got on the phone with you and you actually had a need or were motivated, we were working together. People that weren't, I mean, that's a law of numbers. I can't make someone motivated to sell a house or buy a house. That's not possible. So I knew that at the basic level when I came in, and the biggest frustration was in that role, the answer rate was not that great, even with a triple line dialer. That was my leverage. That was my automation back then, right? And my targeted list was expired because I knew they were bottom of funnel. So none of that, those are the basic levels. That didn't change. The problem was when we were building this is that won't work here. So I really started to see how do I get people on the phone the most? Like if I build the best sales department, and if we as a team have the best salespeople, which I believe we do, how do I get them talking to people that want to talk to them as much of the day as possible? And so that's where call action for us really came in,
Nice.
and automating. And I know that Robbie and them use Sierra Interactive for automation texting, and we used to have slide dial. So automating the sales process, the whole goal was how do we create inbound? And Jesse over at Call Action talks about it a lot. Is like that whole system is to create inbound conversations. So our outbound for ISAs went from 8% to 45% contact rate. So that's how much can we add to the top of the funnel? How many possible conversations can we have in that first lead, where a lot of the leads never even get reached because they never answer, and to text, call, leave emails for 2 weeks sometimes to get that first response to even disqualify the person. That takes a lot of man hours. So now because of call action and a lot of this automation on the lead gen front that we've done, it's actually allowed one ISA to have the same production that I used to have for like 5. The scalability because of that, and the amount of conversations they can have with people that actually want to respond and conversate. I haven't even seen the conversion rates on the bottom, but even if our skills never improve, now 1 person equals 5 on just conversation wise. So what that does for our transaction growth is now our agents, instead of calling PPC leads day 1 that we know have an 18-month window, and Zillow nurtures that are 6-month average close, like those are just realistic data points that we've kind of changed our model to do automation on most top of funnel stuff, and to give clients the experience. Why Lopo's so great at it is I want to listen to what their intent is and what they're doing, see them where they're at, and offer conversations that match it. So we do automation, ISA, and agent kind of as our workflow. And that funnel is, aspirational. Jesse talks about research and transactional. And so anyone that's aspirational and they're not really looking, it doesn't make sense to hit them with 3, phone calls out of the gate, call them every day for the first 2 weeks just because they visited my website. If anything, that's negative behavior, and that's like negatively reinforcing them from registering and using my site. And that's what Zillow's found out. That's why they've done some of the things they've changed. Is someone that's just looking casually doesn't mean they're not ever interested. They just want to build a relationship with your brand. So rather than having salespeople who are committed to an outcome of financial, transacting with this person, we found that automation, AI through Raya, or automation through like a call action Sierra, has allowed for a better consumer experience. So by the time our ISAs see them do a certain trigger event, whether it be scheduling a tour or wanting to actually do a meeting, or they've visited a property so many times it makes sense to outbound reach them. Well, now the ISAs are using that, emotional intelligence to perceive that intent. And now they're nurturing the relationship from anywhere from 3 months to 5 years, and really have that mindset of willingness to nurture our database long term. And to me, buying Zillow leads or any of that, that's building the database. That's just people that if I market to right, will transact or refer people, because I believe because of the video and the engagement we have with our community, we're adding value whether we transact or not. And so then at the bottom of the funnel, our agents primarily are focusing on that 3-month or less time frame people, which is what they're the best at anyway. And that they're offering the best high level consultative service to the people they meet with. And I think that's just such a shift from what we did before, because that's what agents get into this business to do. They want to transact and they want to meet with people that want to meet. They're not looking always to meet and nurture that 2-year relationship. That's where the rainmakers of the world really come in, and they see that vision, and that's why they build teams. But not every real estate agent gets into it to build that type of longevity initially. They come into this needing money. So giving our agents the opportunity to transact, I think is a win-win. It's what they expected when they got their license, and it's what we can offer if we build the right flow. So to scale, to answer that, it's allowed us now to prioritize very assembly line style and the highest and best use of time for everyone in the company, which is going to increase appointments, increase contacts. And now we know the data so much better and we can measure it better, that now we can justify if we want to up our ad spend on a certain lead source, or if we want to try another thing. And because that's all tracked better with that inside sales department, now I'm monitoring the numbers a lot more closely because they're employees. I can have a lot more requirements on how we measure data and send it to CC to interpret. And then the agents are getting more appointments, so they're happier, than just getting, pay-per-click leads. And therefore the transactions follow because everyone's doing a higher and best use of time. And then you can monitor it closely because you know what everyone's doing. And so you know what to tweak back to the other thing. If we don't have enough leads, or we have too many leads, not enough agents, like wherever our conversations, what to coach to now, which gives us the precision to really dynamically adjust as we go through the year.
I love it. Yeah, I suspect that for a lot of people their 2021 thing, because I'm hearing this from you, I'm hearing this from Robbie, from Mike Novak, from all these people, is separate your prospectors and your closers, right? Because it's a different.
You don't put your closer out to pitch in baseball. You don't throw Will Chapman in the World Series. The Cubs didn't throw him out in the first inning. Situationally, yeah, and we should adjust situationally. But I use sports analogies a lot in this because I don't think it's I think it's more relative than people think. Is be situational. The best coaches in sports are Bill Belichick. Look at the Spurs, Popovich, like people that adjust to the scenario and listen to the situation and respond. And maybe that's something I learned in the military. I'm not quite sure, but it seems very intuitive to me to just address the situation, observe, look at the data, and apply a specific situation, which we're all consumers. That's what we want to receive any business we go to. And Mike actually did a really good job when I was at the HAP Summit. Mike Novak talked about that a little bit. Is like just understanding what they're doing. Like, why are they doing what they're doing? And believe them where they're at. And you can't convince someone of something that's not true. You can't sell a house. I've said that since I got into this, 5 years ago. Is this isn't a sales job. It's a consultation. Like you're a consultant. You can't motivate someone to buy a house. You can't. It doesn't matter. I mean, for example, I would never thought I'd live in a 1-bedroom in a downtown area, but I like to work a lot. My house is 100 yards from my office. I value my relationship, with my significant other. So I like to work a lot. My priority is to get home after I work, a 12-hour day and not be in a car for 30 minutes to an hour wasting that. Would I ever have picked before that motivationally to buy and live in a 1-bedroom? Never in a million years, and definitely not in an urban area. I'm not from that. I don't like that much, but I like that my motivation was to be close to work so I can have a good family life. So we're all consumers and we're going to have reasons that we decide to do things. I think it's very important as salespeople to remember the person we're talking with is just a consumer. And our job as consultants is to give them a positive experience, meeting them where they're at. Mm-hmm. And I think that specialization of work, the closers doing what the closers do, I don't want to slow them down and make them less of a closer. I want to give them people to close because you're good at that. Let me let you do that. And the relationship building, let me let someone that's more, we're giving the stability of a salary plus, some incentive as an ISA. Let them incentivize them to nurture long-term and not be tied to the immediate close. So that specialization allows us to give a better experience for the consumer.
It's a totally different skill set. The closer mindset versus the pro, it's totally different.
And neither one's wrong. And I think that's important to accept.
Oh, no, not at all. Yeah. And people are saying the same thing is you gotta, especially with prospecting, disconnect yourself from the outcome, right? You gotta not have it be this. Otherwise,
how do you tell an agent that's, that's literally only making commission, hey, don't be tied to the outcome. Don't, just do it objectively. Yeah. But, their significant others at home, not working, taking care of the kids, maybe, some of our agents, they have a why so big, they have to provide for their family. They're the head of household. They're really providing, or, it's expensive. We're in a recession in some industries. Maybe the spouse lost a job, whatever it is. Agents are only making commission. So as a company to realistically say, hey, I don't know that I could do that, like be that objective. And I'd like to think that I'm pretty objective, but I think it's a big ask to ask people to not try to close everyone as an agent that they're working with. That's a very long-term, and not everyone's financially in that position to be able to think like that every day.
Yeah. So Chris, couple questions I'm getting here in the chat. I think you touched on this a little, but I think this is a great question. Something you wish you would have automated sooner?
I would say the admin process. So we're using Monday.com, and I probably would say the sales, but the thing is, you can add sales all day, but if you don't have a clean admin process, the customer experience and closing the deals is just going to be crazy. Just not a good experience for the consumer if you scale sales faster than admin. So I would honestly, we have some of the best admins I've ever worked with in any industry, and one of the things they were doing a lot of is copy and pasting from into one system into the other, then pulling data from the CRM and then making sure it goes into Sisu, and then working the transaction somewhere else. Now Sisu luckily has a feature to work transactions, which I think was a huge win, and that's why they did it. So everything can kind of be in one space for the admin. But if they're doing moving around, it's the game of telephone. You're going to drop data. You're going to miss. And as a looking at a 1,000-yard view, if my CC data of lead source that lead came from and all those little things aren't accurate, how am I making decisions on what am I spending lead money on, or how am I pivoting if it's not working? If I don't know, it's an emotional decision, which I don't recommend. So I would automate data management from the transaction to Sisu. There's a couple companies out there that do it, because then you're at least making decisions on what needs help. There's always going to be something, like I said, that needs more time or more money thrown at it or more people thrown at it. But if you don't accurately have empirical data to tell you what that is, I don't think you make the right decision. So automating that data transferring and as much of that admin process with a Sisu, Monday, whatever it might be, to do the actual management. I think there's Brokerment. There's several out there. Whatever it is, I would streamline, get them off of Excel sheets if that's what they're using, and streamline that so your data is good and you're making accurate decisions.
Yep, I 100% agree. I'm not a big ops background like you are, but I would get in there and say, "Where's the spreadsheet and how I'm going to kill it?"
100%, and they're going to be tied to that. One of the hard things at first is like someone that's good at admin are very tied to their process. They're supposed to be. They're wired that way.
That's what makes them good.
Come in as a rainmaker, as an ops person. Your personality is not that. That's why you don't do it. So come in and protect it and make it not about inspecting their process. But I think it's so important. And I'm glad I kind of pivoted this. Like, make sure they're involved with the restructuring of it to not feel attacked as if they've been doing something wrong the whole time. It's kind of a miss when I first did it, as I didn't necessarily convey the full picture. And it's very easily for someone that's a high S or C, if you follow the discs, like someone that's really talented in that position, to feel like you're coming at their process versus this is just a company process you came into and we're just improving it, and literally get them involved with, because then you don't have to anymore. Now, in a year from now, they're going to be educated and really in line with where we're going. And they're going to be the ones inspecting the process year over year versus me always having to go in and do it. So I think it's really important to include them with that why we're redeveloping it and really trying to streamline and make their job more call it creative and impactful to make the business more efficient.
Yep. Well, thanks, Chris. We're up on time. Jeff says you're a super smart dude. I 100% agree. Thank you for
Appreciate
hopping
that,
on.
All right, guys. It's a great conference, by the way. I've checked in when I can to watch, and you guys did a great job. I'm excited to see this keep growing.
It's been fun. Yeah.
Hopefully in person in the near future.
Thanks, Chris. We'll see you, man. Bye.